as I enjoy the morning energy and air, always feels fresher here at Pavilion Gardens Cafe in Brighton, my writing office when the weather allows it. I'm going to rant a little bit. I'm going to get a little bit noisy and start with an insult. And it's kind of inspired a bit by some conversation happening on the internet at the moment around Geoffrey Hinton, one of the key so-called thought leaders, pioneers in the world of artificial intelligence, AI, who often philosophizes also about AI, as well as makes predictions and conversations about, I would say recently, about the quest for artificial intelligence to become a kind of superior or equal intelligence to human intelligence. And the conversation happening online at the moment is something he said, I'm probably slightly misquoting, but it's how currently the way that AI is understanding language is pretty much the same or very similar to the way human beings understand and articulate language. And now there's a lot of angry comments happening, always the advocates and the detractors around, but particularly the view, which happens to be one I share, that I think some of these key opinion formers and leaders and so-called philosophizers are really low grade when it comes to thinking deeply about what human consciousness is, what language is, and how they get trapped into a technophilic view where actually the bias that's at the heart of this is the bias towards somehow AI intelligence matching and then maybe going beyond human intelligence, as if it's a given, as if it's so obvious that it can be spoken without any form of genuine scrutiny. And quite rightly, a lot of the commentary that you might call detractors, though I'd say they're not, they're advocates for human intelligence, is the obvious reality at the moment that generative AI isn't understanding or articulating language the same as human beings. What it's doing is it's mimicking, and therefore because it's mimicking human beings, it's a form of biomimicry. It's mimicking human beings in the form of an impersonation. And the fact that it looks like it, and the fact that even some of the coding seems to code and use language like neural networks and so on, is using that language as if that's the same as neural networks in human brains, for example, is what we've actually got is an impersonation. An impersonation is brilliant. If technology impersonates human beings, it can quite often match what human beings can achieve. It can deliver higher quality than the human being can. And you only need to look at right back to the 90s of computer integrated manufacture and early robotics to show that lower levels of errors could be achieved with automated processes than human beings were achieving. But that doesn't mean that what they were doing was in the same way as the the intelligence impulses that were happening inside human beings. Now you might argue that the way I'm talking is so general that I'm actually not aware of my own behaviour that's perhaps exactly the same as the people I'm criticising. But where I'm coming from at the moment is actually something that's so obvious that also matches simplicity. And it's simply that what's being discussed at the moment in some of the conversations around intelligence, though it might be inconvenient to the hypers of AI, is that human intelligence and some of the brain physiology and research we've done so far isn't even close to understanding what the origin of consciousness is, what the origin of intelligence is, about the nuances of intelligence, about how intelligence expresses itself through brain processes and also through the entire body. There are huge arguments that rage through indignant materialistic scientists around the idea that there could be intelligence inherent in the universe. All of those things, they're deep philosophical questions, well worth discussing and exploring. But what we currently have is a really lazy philosophy. And this lazy philosophy, you can hear the noise here of some tables being put out in my favourite cafe. But the lazy philosophy is the idea that because something resembles something, it's the same as it. And it's the same as it inherently. And that the fact that we then anthropomorphize AI and we create language such as neural networks would be one example that somehow that now means that what goes on inside computers is identical to what goes inside biological electrical brains. It's philosophically weak, it's philosophically arrogant, but mostly it's a bit dumb, and it's not really following common sense, which is that if I see a waxwork in a museum and it looks exactly like a person, it isn't the person. Actually, I go to the Edinburgh Fringe quite a lot, arts festival, and see some of the best impersonators in the world, where people gasp because they actually think that a politician, a film star, is standing in front of them. You can sometimes see that with the best Elvis impersonators, and people can come away going, it was just like Elvis was there. But that doesn't mean Elvis was there, and that difference is really important. The fact is that AI can probably impersonate soon human intelligence so accurately that no one will be able to tell the difference. But just as if there is a voice standing behind a person standing behind a wall and I can't physically see them, and they sound just like Elvis to the point where they say they are Elvis, well, of course we can say Elvis is dead. But if we get to a place where it's an impersonation of someone alive, let's say it's Elon Musk or a political figure or a film star, and I can't tell the difference, and I go, it's exactly like, let's say I'm an expert in that person, it's 100% exactly like that person. If that person can do their research and be trained on everything that real person has ever known, that living person, we can't tell the difference, but it still doesn't mean that that person is the same. And even though they could functionally copy that person right down to the last detail, it still doesn't make them that person. And the fact that AI might be in a position where it appears to articulate language and interpret language in a way that's identical or even better to how a human being would seem to do it, the process inside aren't the same, and therefore the intelligence is different. And if we accept the idea that the way it's currently doing it is through impersonation, it's not even close. And I think that is everything, because artificial impersonation is what we currently have, and I'm not against it. I think it's brilliant. It can artificially impersonate various jobs to the point where it can take over from what we do or even enhance it. But to make the statement that it's doing something in the same way is really philosophically lazy. I would suggest potentially dangerous too, if we start to discover that nuanced elements of human intelligence are key for certain kinds of successful decisions and actions. And we only discover that, of course, when there is a disaster scenario where it turns out that AI's impersonation in a certain context was a bad impersonation of what a human being would have done that would have led to a successful or safer outcome, which is where all the ethics are at the moment. Now, I notice I am ranting. I'm speaking quite strongly about this because I think I'm angry that people who are in positions of responsibility sharing science publicly are so philosophically lazy and careless. But mostly it's shocking because you would think that they would know. I think it's born of an arrogance. I think they bought their own hype. And I think part of it is, certainly in academia, that some of the funding is coming from the very companies that want to maximise share prices and get these products out there quickly. And the unique selling point is to say, now we've matched human intelligence. We now know what human intelligence is, and AI can not only produce it exactly, but enhance it. What it's actually producing, both wonderfully and maybe dangerously, are almost perfect copies, are impersonations, and to confuse the two, I think, is at one level just really disappointing, but another, I think, really risky.